The gentle hum of the rooftop party was a dissonant soundtrack to the storm brewing inside me. I swirled the melting ice in my plastic cup, the condensation cold against my fingers, and watched my twin brother, Leo, hold court. He was a natural star, effortlessly pulling everyone into his orbit, bathing in a spotlight that wasn't rightfully his. We were on the stunning rooftop terrace of my aunt's condo in downtown Atlanta, a space she'd generously offered for my graduation party. String lights were woven through ivy-covered trellises, casting a warm, magical glow over the laughing faces. The city skyline glittered in the distance, a silent testament to ambition and success. The celebration was meant to honor the culmination of my hard work, an MBA from Emory University, completed with honors. Yet somehow in the span of a few hours, it had morphed into an impromptu coronation for Leo and his brand new job. Senior strategy lead at Nexus Innovations, he'd announced, his voice booming with a confidence he'd never earned. Mother, beaming with a pride that felt like a physical force, drifted through the crowd, topping off champagne flutes. Our Leo, already heading into tech leadership. Can you believe it? She'd exclaim to anyone who would listen. Her joy was so genuine, so complete, that it almost masked the subtle, lifelong preference she held. I said nothing. I couldn't. Just that morning, in the quiet solitude of my actual office, I had reviewed the finalized hiring records for the latest cohort of new employees. As the new Chief Strategy Officer at Nexus Innovations, it was part of my quarterly review. I had seen Leo's resume, a masterclass in creative writing, puffed up with exaggerated experiences and embellished skills. And I had seen the name of the executive who had, technically, signed off on his employment offer. Mine. Chloe, honey, my father said, nudging my arm. His smile was a tired, familiar thing that never quite reached his eyes. It was a smile, reserved for me, one that held a mixture of affection and faint disappointment. Maybe Leo can pull a few strings for you over at his new company. I'm sure they have something junior. You know, an entry-level spot to get you started. The sheer, unadulterated irony of it was breathtaking. How generous, Dad, I replied, my voice perfectly even, a skill honed over a lifetime of biting my tongue. But I actually have something lined up already. He raised a skeptical eyebrow. He saw me, his quieter, more reserved daughter, and saw a lack of drive. He saw Leo, loud and charming, and saw a born winner. It was a narrative they had co-authored since we were children. Before I could elaborate, Leo, ever the master of timing, swooped in. Chloe's just doing some freelance work for now, he announced to the circle of relatives who had gathered around us. His tone was light, almost brotherly, but it was laced with a familiar, cutting condescension. Trying to figure things out, taking her time. The relatives all nodded in that specific, sympathetic way that felt more like a tragic diagnosis. Poor Chloe, always the quieter one, never quite as ambitious, never quite as accomplished as her brilliant brother. The pity in their eyes was almost harder to bear than outright scorn. If only they had the faintest clue. I opened my mouth to correct him, to say anything that would shatter this carefully constructed fiction. But my mother's voice chimed in again, pulling the spotlight firmly back to her favored son. Leo, honey, you simply must tell everyone about the perks, the company laptop they sent, and your salary. What was it again? Leo smirked, taking a deliberate sip of his champagne. Base of $160K, he said, letting the number hang in the air. Plus equity and some pretty significant perks. I'm basically going to be running the team from day one. A bubble of incredulous laughter almost escaped my lips. I had seen the real offer letter. He had been hired as a junior associate strategist. His salary was $58,000. He would be a member of a 3-person team, with no one reporting to him. And, your office? My Aunt Carol asked, her eyes shining with vicarious pride. Huge corner office, Leo replied without missing a beat, gesturing expansively with his hands. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Starts Monday. I glanced at my phone, the screen illuminating my own quiet smile. In exactly 48 hours, Leo would walk into the gleaming lobby of Nexus Innovations and meet his real boss. Me. My mother, sensing my silence, turned to me. Her smile was gentle, but her words felt like a warning, a plea for me not to rock the boat, not to dim her son's glorious moment. Maybe you could tag along with him on Monday, Chloe. Just to see. Shadow Leo. Get a feel for what the real corporate world looks like. Oh, I'll absolutely be there on Monday, I said, my own smile finally feeling genuine. I met her eyes, then let my gaze drift over to my beaming, triumphant brother. I wouldn't miss it for the world. The party rolled on, a symphony of clinking glasses and boisterous laughter directed at Leo. Distant relatives I hadn't seen in years came up to offer him congratulatory toasts while giving me condolences veiled as pep talks. Your time will come, sweetie, one great-aunt said, giving my back a sympathetic pat that made my skin crawl. Not everyone can be an executive right out of the gate, an uncle added, clapping Leo on the shoulder. Some have to climb the ladder. He said it as if I hadn't just graduated at the top of my class from a top-tier business school. As if my entire life hadn't been a quiet, relentless climb. I finally excused myself, mumbling something about getting a glass of water, and escaped to the relative peace of my aunt's kitchen. I needed a moment away from the cloying, sugar-coated condescension before I said something I couldn't take back. The large window over the sink was open, letting in the warm, humid Atlanta breeze and, unfortunately, the voices of my father and my Uncle Mark, who were standing just outside on the small adjoining balcony, cigars in hand. Well, at least one of them made something of himself right away, my father said, his voice a low rumble. He spoke as if I were miles away, not 10 feet, separated only by a screen and a pane of glass. Chloe has always been cautious, too careful to take any real risks. Never quite pushed herself hard enough. I gripped the edge of the granite, countertop, my knuckles turning white. My jaw tightened. Too cautious. My mind flashed back through a montage of risks he could never comprehend. I thought about the gut-wrenching decision I made at 22, just after my undergrad. Selling my beloved car, breaking the lease on my apartment, and pouring every single cent I had, along with a terrifying small business loan, into rescuing a bankrupt analytics firm that everyone else had written off. I thought of the endless nights I'd worked until the sunrise bled across the sky, fueled by nothing but stale protein bars and lukewarm black coffee. The nights spent wrestling with code, courting skeptical investors, and rebuilding a broken company from the ground up, transforming that failing firm into the multi-billion-dollar titan that Nexus Innovations is today. Leo always knew what he wanted, Uncle Mark replied, his voice full of admiration. He's a born leader, that kid. And Chloe, well, she just followed. My grip on the counter became iron. My mind didn't just flash back. It plunged. I was suddenly 10 years old again, standing in the school gymnasium. I saw the intricate model of the solar system I had spent a month building, the detailed report I had written in my neatest cursive. And I saw Leo, who had shown zero interest for weeks, suddenly step forward when the judges arrived, placing his name tag on the project and dazzling them with his charisma, explaining my work as if it were his own. I remembered the college admissions essay he'd been struggling with. I spent a week helping him rework it, restructuring his scattered thoughts into a compelling narrative. That essay won him a scholarship. I remembered the summer internship I had secured for him at a small marketing firm, only to find out later that he had badmouthed my work ethic in his own interview to make himself look better. Chloe, I snapped back to the present. My cousin, Sophia, stood in the doorway, an empty plate in her hand and a look of genuine concern in her eyes. You okay? You look like you're a million miles away. I forced a smile, loosening my grip on the counter. Just needed a breather. It's a lot. She lingered, her brow furrowed. I get it. This whole thing with Leo is a lot. She hesitated for a moment. You know, it's funny. I applied to Nexus last year for a position in the strategy department. I got a rejection email in less than 48 hours. I raised an eyebrow, genuinely intrigued. Really? Yeah, she said, a note of confusion in her voice. And look, I'm not saying I was a shoo-in, but I have 12 years of solid consulting experience and an MBA from NYU. So I have to ask, how did Leo... She trailed off, not wanting to sound accusatory. That is a very good question, I murmured, a new layer of anger simmering beneath my calm exterior. Just then, Leo himself strutted into the kitchen, his designer loafers clicking officiously on the tiled floor. He was glowing, high on the adoration of our family. There you are, Chloe. I was just telling everyone about my new team. 20 direct reports. Can you believe it? I could, in fact, believe he would say that, especially since his actual title was Junior Associate Strategist on a team of 3, all of whom ultimately reported up a chain that ended with me. Quite the responsibility, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Oh, I'm not worried, he smirked, leaning against the counter as if he owned the place. Leadership comes naturally to me, unlike some people. He looked directly at me, the implication hanging in the air between us. I just smiled. Monday is going to be very, very fun. Sophia, sensing the sudden drop in temperature, quickly excused herself, leaving me alone with my twin. For 2 people who had once shared a womb, we couldn't have been more different. He stood there in a perfectly tailored linen blazer and polished shoes, a picture of effortless success. I wore my usual uniform, a sharp black pantsuit, clean, simple, intentional. He was loud. I listened. He cut corners. I built foundations. He leaned closer, lowering his voice into a conspiratorial, charitable whisper. You know, Chloe, I'm serious. I could help you get a foot in the door at Nexus. I'll have a lot of pull once I'm settled. I raised an eyebrow, waiting for the punchline. I could probably get you a spot as my assistant, he grinned. It would be just like the old days, right? You backing me up, doing the detail work, making me look good. A flood of memories washed over me, so potent it was almost dizzying. The science fair. The group assignments in college where I did all the work and he presented it. The internship proposals I wrote that he passed off as his own to get promotions. The countless family gatherings where he would recount my accomplishments, my funny anecdotes, my clever observations, and tell them as if they were his. That's a generous offer, Leo, I said, folding my arms across my chest. But what about your position? Oh, come on, Chloe, he interrupted with a dismissive chuckle, as if my ambition was a silly little joke. There's no need to be jealous. We can't all be executives. It's okay. Some people are just better suited for support roles, and you've always been great at supporting me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. A new email had just arrived from HR at Nexus Innovations. The subject line read, Final orientation list for Monday, June 9th. I opened it. There, under the heading Strategy Department, was Leo's name. Leo Sterling, Junior Strategy Coordinator. Reports to David Chen, Team Lead. No mention of a corner office, a team of 20, or an executive title. You're right, I said, tucking my phone away, a serene sense of finality settling over me. Monday will be very enlightening. He frowned, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. What's that supposed to mean? Before I could answer, my mother's voice echoed from the terrace, bright and cheerful. Leo, come quick. Your father is making a toast. He straightened his jacket, the momentary confusion erased by the call of his adoring public. He shot me a final, pitying wink and strolled out of the kitchen. I stayed behind for a moment longer, taking a deep, steadying breath. Then I reopened the HR file on my phone, navigating to the scanned copy of Leo's actual signed offer letter. Starting salary, $58,000. Reports to David Chen, team lead. Mr. Chen reports to the director of strategy, who reports to me, back. On the rooftop, the party was finally winding down. My father tapped his glass with a spoon, calling for attention. "A toast," he began, his voice thick with emotion. He locked eyes with Leo, who stood beside him, looking every bit the conquering hero. My father's gaze barely glanced in my direction. To my twins, on their graduation day. They may walk very different paths, but today we raise our glasses especially to Leo for already securing an executive position at one of the top tech firms in the country. To success. To success, the crowd echoed, raising their glasses. Raised my cup of soda water and took a quiet sip. Monday arrived, clear and sharp. The view from my corner office on the 42nd floor of the Nexus Innovations headquarters was breathtaking. The entire Atlanta skyline stretched out beyond the floor-to-ceiling glass, a panorama of steel and ambition. My desk was a large, polished slab of dark wood, empty except for my laptop, a sleek monitor, and a small, gold-etched nameplate. Chloe Sterling, Chief Strategy Officer. My assistant, a sharp and efficient woman named Maria, knocked gently on the glass door. "Ms. Sterling?" "Your brother just arrived for orientation," I smiled, a real, genuine smile. "Thank you, Maria. Let's make sure he gets the full Nexus welcome, shall we?" I pulled up the security feed for the main lobby on my monitor, and there he was. Leo strolled into the cavernous, sun-drenched atrium of Nexus Innovations like he already owned the place. His suit probably cost more than his first month's actual salary, and the smug grin on his face said it all. He was still riding the high from his fictional triumph at my party. Instead of joining the large group of other new hires gathering near the reception desk in the West Wing, he made a beeline for the restricted bank of elevators reserved for the executive floors. A uniformed security guard stepped politely into his path. "I'm sorry, sir. This elevator is for C-suite and executive-level personnel only. Orientation for new hires is down the hall to your left." Leo laughed, a sound of pure condescension. There must be some mistake. I'm Leo Sterling, the new senior strategy lead. I have a meeting with the CSO this morning. The guard, unperturbed, checked his tablet. "I have a Leo Sterling listed. For orientation, sir. Strategy division. Entry-level coordinator." Leo's confident smile faltered, just for a second. "Coordinator? That can't be right. I have my offer letter right here." He rummaged through his expensive leather messenger bag and produced the document he had been flashing around all weekend. A document I now realized he must have doctored himself. The guard took one look at it, his professional demeanor tightening. He discreetly spoke into his radio. A moment later, I saw Ms. Albright, our formidable Director of Human Resources, striding purposefully across the marble floor. "There seems to be an issue here?" she said, her voice calm and precise. "Yes," the guard said. "I have someone here with a document that doesn't appear to match our HR records. It may have been modified." I watched on screen as the color drained completely from Leo's face. His cheeks went from ruddy to a pasty, sickly white. "Modified? No. This is what I received," he insisted, his voice suddenly an octave higher than usual. Just call the CSO, Chloe Sterling. She'll clear this whole thing up. She's my sister." "The CSO does not handle entry-level hiring, Mr. Sterling," Ms. Albright said, her voice cutting through his panic. She held up a file folder. "This is your official, signed employment contract. Entry-level strategy coordinator. Starting salary, $58,000. You will be reporting to team lead David Chen." Leo blinked, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "No, that can't be. I was promised $160,000, a full team, a corner office." "Falsifying corporate documents is a serious violation, Mr. Sterling," Ms. Albright said, her voice firm but not unkind. one that is typically grounds for immediate termination of an offer. However, since today is your first official day, and we believe this may have been a profound misunderstanding, we are willing to move forward with the original valid offer. She gestured elegantly toward the waiting orientation group. Your cohort is right this way. You're already late. I watched, transfixed, as my brother, stripped of all his bluster, followed her in a stunned, silent daze toward the west. Wing. The walk of shame. I turned away from the monitor and took a sip of my coffee. Maria, could you please bring in the morning reports? Right on cue, my office phone rang with a designated tone I reserved for family. Chloe? My mother's voice crackled through the speaker, tight with panic. Something's terribly wrong. Leo just called me. He was in tears. He said there's been some huge mix-up at his new job, some kind of internal sabotage. Can't you call someone there? Talk to HR for him? I smiled faintly, tracing the rim of my coffee mug. How strange. I'll look into it. Can you do something? He's so upset. Surely, Mom, I said, my voice perfectly calm. I can do better than that. Put Leo on the phone. A moment later, his voice came through, a pathetic imitation of his usual bravado, now laced with bitterness and desperation. Chloe, you have to fix this. They're trying to humiliate me. Some HR drone is saying my offer letter is fake. I need you to come down here and straighten this out. Tell them who I am. Come to the executive floor, I said evenly. Top level. Corner office on the right. Just show your ID to the security desk. They'll let you up. There was a pause. Wait, how do you... But I had already hung. 20 minutes later, my office door swung open. Leo stepped inside, his usual swagger completely gone. His polished shoes, which had clicked so arrogantly across my aunt's kitchen tiles, were silent on the thick carpet of my office. He paused, his eyes widening as he took in the sweeping panoramic view of Atlanta. Then he froze, his gaze landing on the gleaming gold plaque on my desk. Chloe Sterling, Chief Strategy Officer. He sank into one of the plush visitors' chairs opposite my desk, his body deflating as if someone had pulled the floor out from under him. The expensive suit that had looked so impressive at the party now seemed like a hollow costume under the bright, unforgiving glare of the morning light. How? He whispered, his voice barely audible. When? About 3 years ago, I said, standing and smoothing the front of my blazer. Remember all that freelance consulting work I was doing after grad school? The work you all dismissed as me finding myself? I was rebuilding a dying analytics firm. I took some risks, invested early, helped grow it into what it is today. Nexus acquired us last year, and they kept me on to run the entire global strategy division. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the desk. Welcome to Nexus Innovations, Leo. Why didn't you tell us? He stammered, looking around the room as if it were a hallucination. I let out a small, humorless laugh. Would you have believed me, Leo? Or would you have found a way to make it about you? You never asked. Not once. You were too busy telling everyone about your own imaginary successes to ever bother asking about my reality. I opened his employee file on my monitor and turned the screen toward him. Let's talk about this application. According to your resume, you have 8 years of experience in strategic operations. That's fascinating, considering you were in school for most of that time. I can explain, he began, his voice weak. Don't. I cut him off, my voice sharp and final. Here is how this is going to go. You have 2 choices. Option 1. You walk away right now. I make sure the doctored offer letter and this entire embarrassing episode disappear. Quietly. No permanent damage to your reputation, and you're free to go build your fantasies somewhere else. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. And option 2? Option 2, I said, walking around the desk to stand by the window, looking out at the city I felt I had helped build. You start today. As a strategy coordinator, entry level, no team. You'll report to David Chen. You'll work. You'll learn. And if you're actually any good, you will earn the title and the salary you want. But you will earn it this time. No more shortcuts, Leo. No more coasting on charm. And no more taking credit for someone else's work. Just then, as if on cue, my office door flew open again. This time it was my parents, their faces etched with worry and indignation. They stormed in and then stopped dead in their tracks, their collective momentum hitting a solid wall of disbelief. "Chloe?" My father's voice was stunned, confused. "What is all this?" I gestured around my office, the vast space, the skyline, the quiet hum of power. "This, Dad, is what happens when you're too cautious. This is what happens when you're the quiet one, the follower who is too afraid to take risks." My mother's hand flew to her mouth, a small, muffled gasp escaping. "You mean you're the Chief Strategy Officer of Nexus Innovations?" "Yes," I said simply. "I have been for a while now, though nobody ever really asked what I was doing all those years I was supposedly figuring it out." My father dropped into the other visitor's chair, his face pale. "But at the party, why didn't you say anything?" "I let you believe what you've always chosen to believe," I replied, my voice quiet but unyielding. That Leo was the successful one, the leader, the golden twin. I looked directly at both of them, the years of silent frustration finally finding a voice. Even when he was clearly lying about his job, his salary, his entire life, you never questioned it, because it fit the narrative you'd already written for us. "Chloe," my mother began, her voice trembling. "We never meant to—" "You constantly compared us," I cut in, the words flowing out now, cool and clear. "You praised his every exaggerated move and ignored my every quiet achievement. You just assumed he was destined for greatness while I was just tagging along. You never saw me." A long, heavy silence filled the office. Then, to my utter shock, Leo stood up. "I'll take option 2, he said, his voice surprisingly firm. All three of us turned to look at him. "The entry-level job," he clarified, meeting my gaze. There was no arrogance in his posture, no hint of a bluff. For the first time, he just looked small. "I'll take it, and this time I'll earn it." I studied him for a long moment, searching for any trace of the old Leo. I found none. "Report to Ms. Albright in HR," I said, my voice returning to its professional tone. "She'll walk you through the proper orientation." After he left, my parents lingered, both looking strangely small and out of place in a room they had never imagined I would occupy. "All those family dinners," my father murmured, staring at the nameplate on my desk. "You always just said work was going fine." "Would you have believed me if I told you the truth?" I asked him directly. "Or would you have dismissed it, or found a way to credit Leo for my success, just like every other time I achieved something he hadn't?" My mother wiped at her eyes, her mascara starting to run. "We were wrong, Chloe, so wrong." "Yes," I said, settling back into my leather chair. It felt like a throne I had built myself. "You were." I looked at them, not with anger anymore, but with a weary clarity. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run." They rose and left without another word. In the months that followed, things began to shift. It was a slow, seismic change. Leo, stripped of his imagined superiority, proved to be surprisingly capable. He kept his head down. He worked hard. He asked questions. Slowly, tentatively, he began to earn the respect of his colleagues, not for the charismatic personality he projected, but for the diligent worker he was becoming. Our family. Dinners became quiet, awkward affairs. The constant casual comparisons ceased. For the first time, my parents seemed to be seeing us as two distinct individuals, with different paths and different strengths. They started asking me about my work, and they listened, really listened, to the answers. 6 months after that fateful Monday, I called Leo into my office again. He entered differently this time. Shoulders steady, eyes direct, no trace of the swagger or the smirk. "Your team lead, David, says you're doing excellent work," I said, reviewing the latest quarterly performance reports. "You were the top performer in your group last quarter." He smiled, and for the first time, it was real. "I actually love the work, Chloe," he admitted, his voice calm and genuine. "I really love it, not just the status I thought it would bring." I nodded, a sense of pride, real, sisterly pride, swelling in my chest. "That's why I'm approving your promotion to Junior Strategy Manager. You earned this one, Leo. For real." He let out a long breath, a smile spreading across his face. Not his old, cocky grin, but something softer, more grateful. "Thank you, Chloe. And not just for the promotion. Thank you for stopping me. For stopping me from going further down that path of pretending, of chasing titles instead of meaning. Sometimes success isn't about being the first one to the finish line or the loudest person in the room," I said, looking out at the skyline. "Sometimes it's about being honest, doing the work, and moving forward in the right way." As he left my office, I found myself thinking back to that graduation party. It felt like a lifetime ago, a scene from someone else's life, a world where everything was a performance and truth took a back seat to image. Now everything was different. I learned that sometimes the best victory isn't about public humiliation or revenge. It's about giving someone the chance to tear down their own facade and discover their own truth. I picked up my phone to call my mom. There was still a lot of healing to do, a lot of lost time to make up for. But at least now, we could start from a place of honesty. I glanced out over the Atlanta skyline, the city lights beginning to sparkle as dusk settled in. The view from here, I thought, is always better when you've earned it.